Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. If you're a female founder, then you'll probably know this feeling all too well. You're trying to launch a business, but you're also thinking about getting married, starting a family, and it feels like the sand is slipping through the hourglass, knowing that neither is going to stop and wait for you. I'm right there with you. I'm getting married next year, and my fiance and I are talking about kids, but my business is in the earliest of early stages, and I can't help but feel regret, like I should have started earlier. I found myself rushing, trying to get as much built as possible before my whole life changes. And being a female founder, this is the reality. Like, you don't actually know how you're going to manage both. So talking to Emma Stallworthy, founder of Your Reformer, was not only educational from a business perspective, but for me, it was a sigh of relief. Emma launched Your Reformer right after her second baby, and she didn't say that it was easy or glamorous, but she told me that passion is what will carry me through the hard seasons. And the business didn't actually pull her away from being a mom, it made her a better one. And that's what I took from this episode, but we also get into the stuff that makes her business worth studying, the economics of a reformer rental that I'm actually shook no other fitness founder is replicating, why she refuses to use the word pivot, and how she mapped her entire product ecosystem around a single customer life cycle so that your reformer could meet someone wherever they are in their Pilates journey and grow with them. And finally, what nobody tells you about all the costs of scaling globally. So if you're starting a fitness brand, navigating life changes as a founder, or curious about the alternative approaches to fitness business models, then this episode is for you. Emma, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Maddie. I'm really happy to be here.
Me too. I'm so excited. And when we talked off air, it was amazing to see your kids running around the house because I just feel like that's like so real, you know?
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, like it sometimes feels like life and business start to blur, and like I think that's beautiful, but also pretty challenging to navigate. And I think like adding motherhood into that is like its whole other beast.
Yeah, they help keep you grounded though, help keep you focused on the right priorities. I'm literally sitting in my son's bedroom right now, kind of trying to stay away from the noise, and gave Ben a very stern word saying, please keep them downstairs and quiet.
I love that. I don't have kids yet, but I feel like I experience that to some degree with my cats. I always joke with my brother that our cats, I have a boy and a girl, and they weirdly mirror my nephew and my niece's personalities. And so they talk about it all the time. And I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I feel you. Like our cat's such a little gremlin. She's running around and doing all this crazy stuff. And he always looks at me and he's like, please stop talking.
Yeah, I mean, human babies, fur babies, they're all part of the family. They create the fun and the chaos.
Yeah, and to your point, like keeps me grounded. And sometimes if I'm working from home, like just take a couple minutes to give them some attention, like really refreshes me.
Yeah, definitely.
So talking about your business, I am so excited to have you on because I think, you know, most founders generally trace their idea back to some sort of like market gap or frustration, but yours actually traces back to something much more personal, how you found Reformer Pilates. So I'd love for you to like walk the audience through your experience and how that led you starting Your Reformer, and not just like how did that shape the product, but also like how you built the business.
Yeah, sure. So as you've touched on, very personal attachment to Pilates and Reformer Pilates. So Ben and I, my husband and I, used to own a chain of gyms, very busy. I'm a type A personality. I'm not sitting still. I want to do all things, bit of a control freak in a sense that, you know, I do everything the best. So therefore I must do it all. And so, you know, I found myself in this position when we actually we wanted to start a family, where I came off the pill and I wasn't cycling. And, you know, so straight to the doctor, all right, what's going on? Not an overly patient person anyway. So, you know, the concept of waiting and seeing, fortunately, my doctor didn't tell me to do that. He said, you know, let's go straight on to kind of support medication wise to see if we can get you cycling. Nothing seemed to work, and we essentially ended up in the IVF process. that journey is an interesting one in a sense of this is going back sort of 10 years ago now, maybe more. It was very much this is science, and there's not much you can do to change the outcome. Some people will fall pregnant and it will work. Some people it won't. You won't necessarily know why. And so that concept of, well, what can I do to help change the outcome or get a positive outcome to get pregnant, was really difficult to kind of think about. Oh, well, it's science, so therefore there's not much I can change. But in saying that, it's a very difficult process to go through, mentally, in a relationship. It's challenging because every month, you're seeing your friends announce their pregnancies, and that's a really weird feeling when you're happy for them, but also jealous or emotional and upset by that. My sister fell pregnant shortly, like just after trying. That threw me into a spin of emotions, and so I looked for ways to get myself through that, for tools of managing emotions and anxiety and fear and everything. So I turned to meditation, and movement was one that I really needed to look at. So I was running, I was HIIT training, I was, if I didn't sweat, then it wasn't a work, like it wasn't worth it, that sort of thought process. And so my naturopath actually said to me, I think you should try some alternative movements, like yoga and Pilates. So I did try yoga. That modality is great, but it wasn't for me. It didn't resonate the same way that Pilates did. Pilates gave me that, I guess, sense of empowerment and satisfaction from the movement. I still felt like I'd, nourished my body and I was strengthening and doing some great challenges. But what it was actually doing was help me balance my parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So someone who was kind of working at cortisol level stress, chronic stress, 24/7, was able to kind of bring it back into balance, which in turn essentially sent messages to my body that, oh, okay, we're not in fight or flight mode. We're not threatened. We can have a pregnancy. We can have a child.
I'm kind of shook. You're blowing my mind a little bit because I love Pilates. It's like it's honestly exclusively like what I like to do. I throw yoga in maybe once a week, but I used to weight train exclusively for like 2 years. And then I found Reformer Pilates, and the reason now that I'm so obsessed with Pilates, and you're making it click for me, was because I move so fast in my daily life. Like I am constantly juggling a million things, and like brain is working 100% of its capacity for like literally the entire day. And the thing that I love about Pilates is the slow, intentional movement. So I feel like as a perfectionist, it feels really good because you're focusing on performing that move perfectly. It's not about reps. It's not about speed. It's like how well and like how intentionally can I do this move? And like I always loved how it felt like I was slowing down and like focusing on just one thing at a time. And I love that, but I didn't know about the connection to the nervous system. And like you're blowing my mind because that makes a ton of sense, but I just never knew that that's, I think, why I'm so drawn to it.
Yeah, it's low impact, so you can come back to it again and again. It's as you said, intentional, so it's mindful. So you're not thinking about anything else other than what your body's doing. It's very connected to the body. So for someone who struggles to sit and do 10, 15 minutes guided meditation, or just self-meditation, this is giving me that benefit whilst moving, whilst doing what I love, and moving my body and challenging myself. I mean, anyone who's tried particularly Reformer Pilates knows that it doesn't matter how long you've been doing Pilates, you will be humbled in each session. There's always a way to progress and refine and extend yourself, which is one of the reasons I think it's so popular, is because it's got that variety and it's got that. It's not competitive with the person next to you. It's just progression upon yourself. And so I made some of those changes, Pilates being the biggest one that I believe had the impact for me. And then we had taken a few months off after doing about 5 cycles, went back, and that next cycle worked. And we were pregnant, and I now have my eldest son, Bodhi, who is turning 8 soon.
Oh my gosh.
And we've also got a second son, Noah, who came along 3 years later, and I kept up with the changes. Pilates was there for me. I literally did Pilates the day before I went into labor with Bodhi. Went straight back to it afterwards. It is something that can be modified and built upon as you kind of come back to your strength and, in time. Which I love about it. There's not a lot of modalities there for you that you can do during that kind of period of so much change in the body. And I actually fell pregnant naturally with Noah. So yeah, we did go back to IVF. That couple of cycles weren't working, and then in between I was about to go back and did a test, and they said, sorry, you're pregnant. So, I mean, not sorry, like, congratulations, you're pregnant, but sorry, you're not going to do IVF.
Sorry, you're pregnant.
Yeah. So very strong connection and gratefulness to the modality personally. Through that process, we were starting to introduce wellness studios, reformer studios into our clubs. And I was like, I just love this so much. I'm going to upskill, become an instructor. This is going back 10 years. So really early from a health club perspective to have reformer Pilates. And so we weren't sure what the uptake would be with members. So I said, all right, I'll upskill, I'll become an instructor, I'll look after our first studio, I'll teach a lot of the classes. And so then through that, it all started to click again in terms of hearing all of the different stories of the broad range of our members and how they were resonating with the practice and the benefits that they were seeing and what they were loving. And we were bringing people who were basically at-risk members that had kind of got over the gym, weren't wanting to come, to then try this. And all of a sudden they were back there like every second day, they were consistent. I had a gentleman, I remember him, who was a golfer. And his wife had dragged him in, of course, it's a pretty common story.
As we do.
And he said to me, Em, my golf swing is just improved out of sight. I've gone up in my par a couple of strokes, so all of the different.
I'm so dead.
Yeah. And then COVID happened, and Melbourne, we were locked down for a long period of time, but the whole fitness industry was rattled, among many others, of course, but trying to pivot and work out how we kept our 7,500 members engaged and how we kept our 120 staff working or doing something through that period. One of the tactics was we hired out our reformers and we were running live Zoom classes to the members and sending them the link. So the feedback there and the kind of almost trial of the business happened from that perspective. So kind of really understanding or having a passion for the modality, I think it has been one of the best things I've seen in this business. I didn't have it in the previous, whereas like in terms of getting up and wanting to go to work, my friends have said to me on a Sunday, like, oh, it's Monday tomorrow. Do you get that feeling of, oh, I've got to go to work tomorrow? I was like, no, I actually love what we do. I can't wait to go to work. And that's something that I've brought in our business across all of our team. Passion is one of our core values. And then secondly, the business, that problem in the market that you mentioned, kind of all intersecting at once.
Yeah. And I think the model itself is really interesting because I don't see a lot of like fitness entrepreneurs think about it this way. To me, I've either seen it like really bifurcated where it's like either purely studio or like purely online. And I think what you're doing is really interesting. So I'd like love for you to talk a little bit about like the economics of that. How do you fund the inventory, price of subscription, like cash flow, all that stuff, like while you're still growing? Because I think this makes so much sense. And I don't think a lot of people consider it to be an option that's viable. But I think because it's so, I just think it makes a lot of sense. And I'd love for you to like shed some light on that.
Yeah. Well, firstly, I'll say the business model was, I guess, born out of, or the concept, it's all customer centric. So whether we look at our B2B side of our business or the D2C side, we, understand the customers intimately. And so it's what's the solution for them? So we knew it wanted to be solution. We didn't just want to be a product or a bricks and mortar. We wanted to be the full solution. We wanted people using the product because ultimately we believe in the benefits of regular practice, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to improve people's lives by consistent reformer Pilates practice, and they get the benefits from that. So how do you get them doing it and being consistent? And that's through having the on-demand and the product and making it accessible. So bringing it to them in the home or in the space that's convenient, that works within their lifestyle. The economics is an interesting one. So from if you look at a rental fleet perspective, which I think is sort of what you're talking about with hiring, you've obviously got the capital up front to purchase the product. And we made a conscious decision that we wanted to have a commercial grade product as part of that rental because we wanted it to last and we can get the return on investment of that product. So we didn't want it to start to look tired. If we had a timber frame, for example, that can get nicked easily when it's in and out of trucks and in and out of people's homes. So we knew that was across, it needed to stand up to it. And that's, 5 years later, we've absolutely made the right decision there. We were fortunate enough that we were in a position to be acquired, our chain of gyms. So we did have some capital personally behind us that we invested in. I think entrepreneurs, and having already done a business and an exit in a business, we had more confidence, I guess, in investing in ourselves, essentially, in the model and going with it. But I think whether you have an investor, whether you have, money behind you yourself, or you go to the bank for a loan, you have to have a robust plan and financial model. And so I'm lucky enough that my dad is an amazing accountant and helped us build this financial model to show us the numbers so that we could look at the cash flow, we could plug the different inputs and change them and see what kind of impact that would have before we even did anything in the market. So we kind of knew and played with our price points and so sort of knew where we were tracking. So you could really be really clear and lasered on your goals and, sales and what would show up. And that gives confidence to an investor, to a bank, to yourself, if it's your money and your home on the line, as to how you're tracking towards that as well. So I think that's really key. And
do you think
then we've also... Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Sorry. There you go.
Well, I was going to say we weren't just rental, we were sale as well. So because we had product to sell, that helped cash flow too. When you're looking at D2C, B2B is a whole nother beast in cash flow and, date payment, credit terms, all that sort of side of things. But D2C very much, it was in and out. So that helped, I guess, fund the business as it grew too.
Do you think that from the beginning when you guys were running the gyms that you were always looking for sort of your thing to make your business and to grow it into something unique? Or do you think truly the circumstances in the way that life presented it to you, without that, this wouldn't have happened?
No, I think, we were part of our, I guess, MO in the gym business was we were constantly reinvesting and spending back into the business and evolving it. So it's really been part of us in terms of being innovative and understanding the trends and the evolution of the industry and what customers are looking for. And so, for example, we were one of the first independent clubs in Australia to go 24/7 back in 2008. We were absolutely one of the first clubs to do boutique brands. So bringing in, your HIIT training style the wellness studio, reformer studios into our clubs under one roof, under a studio membership. So all of a sudden that changed the game for us. We weren't fighting for volume of members. It was then a yield play. So, you know, we had a much higher percentage of integration of members into paying higher memberships. So that changed the metrics for us in our business, and therefore what we were actually working on. And from doing that, then you learn more around engagement and community and brand. That business, we inherited a brand. We certainly built upon it, but it wasn't our brand to start with. We bought a club, had that brand. So this business has been a wonderful journey of being very clear and having great conviction around what our brand was from day one and being very clear on that. And I think that, I hope that comes across in the public eye around what our brand is and who we are. And it's certainly what attracts great talent in the team as well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of learnings from the gym that has then transferred into this, even individually or personally, as leaders, as managers, as how you build in a very fast growing business, how you keep a team that's also very fast growing, connected and focused on the same goal. And I think the brand and the core values and being in open communication is a big part of that we absolutely learned from our previous business.
Yeah, and it sounds like, and I'm glad that you said that, because interestingly, I think what so many fitness entrepreneurs don't understand is they go into it being like, I know what I want to build and I want to build it because of my personal experience, which I don't think is wrong, but I think it's requires that additional step of market validation, right? And understanding what the market actually wants to make sure that those things actually meet. And then there's a unique POV there that really hit on something. And so it kind of seems like with the gym, you guys inherited the brand, but you took the opportunity and you were like, let's make this into something that's really solution and customer oriented. And then to then have the experience personally with Pilates and be like, wow, I've seen the results of this. You became the target audience where you're like, I understand the problem and the benefits from such a deep place, where then if infusing that with the idea of being customer centric and what you're trying to give as an outcome, to marry those together makes for such an important foundation. Because otherwise, if you're starting a studio, for example, and you have an idea of what you want it to be based on what you think you were missing in your own experience, but you don't actually validate that against where you're at and physically in a location to understand the people who are coming, do they also want that, or is that just a you thing? And I'm gonna say probably a good amount of the time other people probably want it too, but I do think it's required that due diligence and to keep that mentality at the forefront, so then you're not accidentally walking into a situation where 6 months in it's crickets and you're wondering why, and you've invested all this stuff in without having done the validation, just like any other product or service.
Yes. But I would also, you're spot on, Manny, but I would also say that just you need to also be aware that the business will be iterative. So whatever you start with, the consumer's changing all the time. The science, if you're in fitness, science is changing and learning more, particularly around women, every year. So, you've got to listen to the customers. You've got to, be outward in your focus. You've got to hear the tough conversations. It's the customer we've let down in some way, shape or form that makes it known that sometimes is the most important person to listen to. It's not the most comfortable one to listen to, but it's the gold nugget in that around, okay, how can we turn this into a moment of improvement?
Yeah. And I think sometimes when we talk about iteration and pivots and stuff like that, I think for somebody who hasn't been in business for very long, or is entering this for the first time, sometimes it feels like those moments might be major disruptions to the business, where you're like, holy shit, I have to pivot today in order to make this work. It's the Mark Zuckerberg of it all. But In my experience, at least the way that like I'm experiencing it now, is it's much smaller and more nuanced and a lot more of like we've been sitting with this for so long, and like just by doing the work every day, suddenly you look back at what you did even just last year and you're like, damn, that actually doesn't resonate anymore. And that is the moment of like when these things need to occur. And so I would love for you to like talk a little bit about how that has manifested for you. Like has it been a little bit of both, or do you think that it really is just like continually looking at the business and being like, is this working? Is it resonating? Is it still doing what we need it to do and go in the direction that we want it to go?
Yeah. I mean, I think like we've continued to build upon our ecosystem of products so that we are continuing to close the gaps of what we learn and see. So for example, Pilates education is something that's we start our first round of enrollments in about a month or two, which is really exciting. And that's been a gap for us that we've heard but thought maybe that's a bit too hard for us to tackle right now. So, that's born from like if you think about our customer life cycle, if I talk through a potential customer life cycle with us, we've got someone who's thought about trying Pilates. They hire a reformer with us because it's an easier, low barrier to entry. I can try it. I can hand it back if it's not for me. No one's watching me. I'm in my privacy of my own home. And then I found I love it. Now I've found I love it so much that, I'm going to do a course. I'm going to see what this is all about, learn more about it. And then you think, I'm going to do some one-on-ones at home and teach clients. And then you find the ignite there in the passion. So then you convert your garage or your spare room to a small studio, and all of a sudden you've got 4 reformers and you're teaching small group clients. And then you're like, right, this is a career for me now. I'm going to go all in on this, and I'm going to open a studio, and I'm going to, I'm going to go up to 10 reformers or whatever it is. And I've got my brand now, and I've got my class, and this is my new life. And how exciting is that? So the bit we didn't have in that was, how do I become an instructor?
Yeah.
And so that is, I guess, an example of iteration in the product model, and what you're offering. And I think I'm careful not to say the word pivot, because I feel like that is a frightening word for people who think I've gone and invested and I believe in what this business model is, and what if I have to pivot back? And that sounds like a big change, but it can just be small tweaks. And I'll use another example with us, just expanding geographically. The way we speak about Pilates, the Pilates industry itself in Australia is very different to what it is in the US. So learning how to, I guess, adapt your copy, for example, in the campaigns that you do is an example of how you have to be iterative to be able to talk to the consumer that you're trying to talk to. So it could just be a geographical thing, not necessarily a business model issue, but just the language. And again, understanding that customer and their pain points, and how you resonate with those pain points for them.
That's really cool. It kind of sounds like, I don't know, like when you started it and it was just like a solution to COVID and to get people to stay consistent with exercise. And then now it's this beautiful model where you're empowering women not just to be their best physical self and to discover this wonderful exercise form, but now it's also like taking it to the next level and then sharing it with other people. And I'm wondering if it was this type of experience where you had a mission at the beginning and you were like, I want people to be exposed to Pilates, or like to realize the benefits of Pilates. And then, that actually would have stayed consistent through this change and through, not change, but more like this expansion and growth opportunity for you guys. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what's super cool about that is this is how it is, like across industries, across products, across whatever you're doing. Like if you have your mission and you continually work towards that, like make small decisions one after the other that are in alignment with that, the growth opportunity that comes from that is not always one that's expected, but way better than you could have imagined.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly didn't, maybe Ben did, but I certainly didn't start this business for global domination.
Yes.
And, but yes, we are ambitious. We like, goal orient, we like chasing goals.
Yeah.
We like to provide opportunities to our team. We're lucky enough that this is a growing industry, and that, the, I guess, focus on longevity and well-being and, what that looks like for the human body in today's modern world is, looking at more lower impact exercises and recovery modalities and mindfulness and preventative health. And, reformer Pilates is one part of that. And we're certainly not sitting here saying that we are, the special pill or the special sauce that solves it all. It's a piece of it. And I think, it's that, I believe it's a long-term, modality that can be adopted, because it does adapt to every season of life, men and women. It's got the variety that people are looking for and the challenge to keep you coming back to it. So, I think it's one thing in fitness in general is that consistency is the hardest thing for most people. It's trying it. First, it's the barriers to actually maybe stepping foot in a gym or a studio or whatever, that's stopping them from doing that. But then second, it's, we go hard for a month and then, we drop off or something, life happens and we get out of the habit of it and then we don't go back. Whereas, or we injure ourselves because we've gone too hard, or all the reasons as to why we get bored with it, why people drop off and stop. Whereas I think, I've been doing this now for 12 years and I'm still keep coming back and, love doing new things on it. Or I even just love going back to the foundations of it where, I haven't done this exercise in so long, and then you also get, because you've been consistent, you get that, I guess, reinforcement of, wow, I feel like this is so much easier now, and look how far I've come, which again gives the psychology to keep you going because you feel like you're getting somewhere. So I think it's a combination of, the market and the learnings that are happening with the human body in today's day and age. Even if we talk about right now with what's going on in the world and the level of anxiety and fear and things like that, like we need practices and systems and things that can support our nervous system to not fall apart. Making that accessible so that they can do that, even if it's just 10, 15 minutes in their busy day is what we're here for. So, yeah.
So you said adapting to every season in life. And I feel like this is such an important conversation. I think about this all the time as a woman specifically. There's a lot to think about as your life changes. Like, my fiance and I are getting married hopefully next year, and we're already thinking about kids. And I think about my career and it's like, holy crap, how do you juggle it all? And you launched your reformer just after having your second. And I'm like, you were still working out and like starting a business. You've got a lot of emotions and hormones and a lot of changes happening. What is going on in your head when you're doing all of this? And what does that say about, I think, like the kind of mindset that you need to have as a founder?
I think it comes back to that passion. I think if you truly believe and love what you're setting out to do, then you're not going to have the same feelings of regret or guilt. Noah just came with me. I will preface to say, like, he was my second. I do think it would have been very different if he was my first. So, all life-changing when you have a child, that things that you don't even expect or realize. And so, yeah, he came with me. It was, I think one of the benefits that you don't have if you aren't your own boss is the flexibility. So I was able to choose my hours, and I was able to still make him my priority and then fit in what I needed to do around that, him and Bodhi, because I still had a 3-year-old as well. So sometimes that's harder than the newborn, some will say.
It is.
So
honestly. In our family, we called it the blob phase, when they're just hanging around, like not doing much.
Sleeping.
But but then the toddler at the same time, it's like, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. So good support system. Ben and I working together has always worked well for us in terms of same goals and values, and it's a true partnership. So when we travel, it's very hard because you absolutely miss the other person in terms of sharing the pickups and the drop-offs, or the keep them quiet while I'm on this call sort of situation. I think the combination of passion, so you believe in what you're doing, but also just the ultimate flexibility and autonomy to do to balance that time as mum and as founder is what worked for us. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to shy away from it. It's not for everyone. It's not. I don't want to paint a picture that it was all, sunshine and rainbows.
I say that all the time on the podcast. Like, this is a hard path, and it truly, I agree, is not for everybody. But I think actually, like, what you said made me feel the best. And I've asked a lot of people this question because I know a lot of female founders who are moms, and it's like, how do you do it all? And I think it's reassuring to know that when it comes from a place of passion, that it's all going to be okay. Because you're right. Like, even where I'm at right now, I have a 9-to-5, and then this is my passion that I work on the side and like build it at the same time. And, even now, like, I don't have to do this, but I do it because I love it and because I want to, and because it's what motivates me to be a better employee anyway, because like, I'm learning so much and then I'm feeding it here. And so to know that when that next phase comes, like, this won't stop because it's a part of me and it's who I am and it's like what I love is incredibly reassuring. So I appreciate that. And I'm sure a lot of all the other, like, soon to be moms or moms listening to this being like, how do I also manage a company? It's going to be very reassuring.
You just said something that really resonates, in that I think the first time around when I didn't have this business and I didn't have that same passion or focus, very much feel lost as a woman. Like, who am I now? Because I've got this little person who's so dependent on me. I don't have the same independence or flexibility that I used to, or my career doesn't look the same right now. Yeah. And so having this business, I guess, was that cup filling element that might sometimes balance and shift a little bit without it. So, showing up better as a mum than I might have otherwise, because I was still getting stimulated and challenged and feeling a sense of purpose, career-wise, that might have otherwise made me feel lost or a bit anxious or emotional. So, yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Well, I mean, you brought it up to me, but I think
you articulated it better.
I think the other thing too that I want to touch on that we talked a little bit about off air is imposter syndrome, and hilariously you mentioned that your husband just like doesn't necessarily experience that at all. And when I talk, a lot of women founders talk about imposter syndrome. I find, I guess, more than like the men do now that I'm really thinking about it. But how have you navigated that? Like, how are you working through it and dealing with it? And, what are you telling yourself on the days when it's super noisy up there?
Yeah, that was such a hilarious conversation that I had with Ben once, when I said, oh my gosh, I just pinch myself. Like, do you ever get imposter syndrome? Like, this is crazy. We're running a global business. Who are we? do we know what we're doing? And he said, no, I never feel that. I never feel that. And okay, it's just me.
Right.
I actually think it's a strength that we have that feeling. And the reason I say that is I think it makes you reflect more on, okay, what don't I know? What are my gaps?
Yeah.
How do I fill those gaps? Who are the experts? Who are the people that I need to surround myself with? What's the information I need to learn so that I feel more confident in my decisions, or so that it's more informed? And whereas, without that sense of feeling, I think you can kind of maybe make some quick decisions that you're like, no, I'm confident, it's going to be good, without maybe the research or the backing, certainly that the team may need to get behind decisions. So, yeah, I actually think when I think about it more, as much as it's not a comfortable feeling, I think what it makes you go and do and seek ultimately continues to develop you as a person, and supports the decisions that you're making in your business.
I'm really glad that you put it that way, because I've never thought about it. But when you said, always wondering what you don't know and what are your gaps, this is literally what I think about all the time. I'm always like, I don't know how to do this yet. And I'm still learning how to do this. And I don't feel like I know it well enough to be confident about it. And that drives me to learn more and to fill those skill sets, either with myself or to fill that gap with somebody who knows better than I do. Like, I think I'm at least like aware enough to know where I can develop my skills and where I'm just like, like I'm going to need somebody else to come in and help me with that, because that's just not going to be worth it. But I never thought about it as a strength, because I do think it's not necessarily something that's plagued me to the point of an action, but it's more just like a constant feeling that you have of like you're not there yet, or you're not knowledgeable enough yet. And I think it's always a little bit of like, if I start to overthink it too much and I let it, if I look at it too closely, then it starts to be like,
you've got to find the sweet spot between I need to be uncomfortable to be out of my comfort zone, because that's where the brilliance happens and where the growth happens. But also to make sure that you get yourself enough informed to have the confidence. But yes, it's a fine line between just, fear and not able to move forward versus, no, I've got a level of confidence in myself, and belief in what we're doing. And, okay, this is what I need to know to then, move forward.
And also, like, enough to recognize how far you've come as a person. I think sometimes because we're so deep in it that we don't realize the own skills that we've developed through experience and hard work. And it can be challenging and scary sometimes to be confronted with a new situation and then have to be like, I technically haven't done this before, but I know that I've done all of these other things. And those all started from the same place of like, I've never done that before, especially as a founder. You're doing 1,000,005 jobs that you've literally never done before, often in an area where you've never worked before. And it's a lot of like, of course you have imposter syndrome, but it all starts from the same place of like inexperience. But I think it's important to recognize sometimes how far you've come, because that can help you get over the hurdle of the initial like, ooh, like, am I ready for this?
Yeah.
And the answer is often
say, I have a bit of I say it as a bit of a laugh with the team, but it's serious. It's like, well, learn as you play. It's a journey, and as long as we eyes wide open and mistakes are learnings, and how do we avoid doing the same mistake, then that's the key. But I think you've nailed it, Maddie, in terms of like, I don't know many entrepreneurs who stop and smell the roses. I think that's one of our great life learnings perhaps, is to make sure that you do celebrate the wins and the little ones along the way. But most of us are generally like, right, what are we chasing next? What are we chasing next?
Exactly. I think it's just because we always live in this like weird zone between future thinking and also understanding like operationally how to function today. So you're constantly context switching between like where are we going and what are we doing today to get there. And every day it's just like what's next. But I think, potentially like part of our life path is truly being able to embody the present and stay here and sometimes feel it as it's happening and not just worry too much about where it's going. Because I think naturally we're gifted in the way to be like vision centric. I just think that's like who we are as human beings. But to the challenge that we have in this life, I think, is to like really stay present and enjoy what's happening as it's happening. Like, as cliche as it sounds, like, life is a journey, and we are meant to enjoy the journey of it, like not just the destination.
Yeah. Insert Pilates. Mindfulness. Focus in
Literally.
the moment.
Literally. Okay, I have one more question for you before we wrap up. But what would you say, or like what has been, I think, one of the biggest things that you learned as an early stage entrepreneur that nobody told you about, that you were like, I didn't realize that it was this way, or that this happened in business, or even if it's like, nuance to your industry, like what is the one thing that you remember distinctly being like, wow, nobody told me that this is what it was like?
What comes to mind is probably when we went outside of Australia and all of a sudden dealing with different time zones. That was just a whole nother level of complexity as a founder, because you can't really ask your team. There's not really anyone who's going to be there to do the early morning calls or the night calls in the consistent way that's required to build a business. And I think, and also it looks glamorous from the outside in terms of, oh, they're on a plane, they're traveling back to the States again, or they're off to Germany or whatever. But the reality is it's so hard. Like you're traveling, so you're jet lagged. You've got to be on for all your meetings or your team or whatever it is that you're doing on the ground. Then you're doing your second day of work because you've got all your meetings and you touch bases with the team back home. And you literally come home like a shell of a person. And everyone's like, how was the trip? Was it amazing? It was I need a holiday from my trip. But I think that's been the hardest part that I didn't anticipate, and I don't have a solution for still yet, in terms of the juggle of that. Ben looked up something the other day and it said, being a CEO of a global company is like being permanently jet lagged.
Yeah. Again, not for everybody.
I'm painting a stunning picture here. This is where the passion comes in. If you love what you're doing, you're still motivated to do it.
Yeah, you still love it. And it's so fulfilling, like even aside from all of these challenges. And I'm sure looking back, you're like, thank God, like this path was the right choice, and you'd make that choice, even knowing everything that you know now.
Yeah, there's nothing. It's incredibly fulfilling. As much as it's as challenging, it's just as fulfilling to be on this path and journey. So yeah, I think what I should do actually, Maddie, as an exercise is reflect on me individually and how much I've grown, even in the last 4 years, compared not just, what we've achieved in the business, but as an individual, what have I learned and who am I now versus what I was, and how does that translate into my friendships, into my relationships, into me as a mother? What's the legacy I'm leaving this world, contributions, like looking at it all that way, I think would be a pretty powerful exercise.
Honestly, that's actually like my favorite kind of question to ask on this podcast, because I really believe that the reason I'm obsessed with entrepreneurialism is because it's a microcosm for our human experience. And the pressure tested growth that you experience here, like, directly correlates, I think, to how you grow as a person during the entire lifespan that you're on this planet. It's just like really intense as an entrepreneur. And it's forced growth where, like, you have to be self-aware and you have to be able to grow as a person in order to do this job. And not every job requires that level of self-awareness and growth. And I think that's like why I find it so fascinating and so interesting, because of that reason exactly. Like, it changes not just who you are as a leader, but it changes who you are as a person. And there's such a human element to entrepreneurialism that I don't think is brought to the surface as much.
Yep. Yeah, it's certainly resilience is the word that comes to mind, which, you know, that's a pretty important skill.
100%. Resilience is, it's not a personality trait. It is something that I think you have a high tolerance for, but it's something that's consistently developed as you go through the process.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I need you to call me after you do this exercise.
Okay.
Because I want to know what you heard and like what you found and how you're thinking about it.
Maddie, my imposter syndrome's gone. Look at me. This is what I've done. Amazing.
And you're like, okay, banished. You know? Well, thank you so much for being here, Emma. I had so much fun talking to you, and I really appreciate you sharing your experience and your expertise with the audience listening, and I hope it is as helpful for them as it has been for me.
Thank you, Maddie. Some gold nuggets that I got from you as well, so it's been a great conversation.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. I love that it's a little bit bi-directional, because usually it's just me like absorbing all of your wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah, no, I love the way you articulate and your take on it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. You can find all the links to connect with Emma in the show notes. And if you feel called to support the podcast, please leave a review. That's always the most impactful. And if you're looking for more, I would be deeply honored if you wanted to just buy me a matcha. The link is below. And if you enjoyed this episode and are looking for more before the next one, dive into The Well on Substack. There you'll find more founder wisdom and essays on entrepreneurship. See you guys next week.